If you could just introduce yourselves to the fine folks at home, I'd really appreciate it.
My name is Anna Maria, and I am the founder and vocalist in the band Vajra.
We love playing on stage, so we go up there and we have a good time, and we want you to feel that.
We're all musicians from different pasts.
That ended up being one of my favorite songs that I've recorded.
One of my favorite horror movies is Event Horizon, how it was like a possibility, almost like using science to rip yourself into hell. Oops, you know.
You want to hear it fast. You want to hear it well played. You want to feel that intensity.
Punk rock is not an excuse to suck.
Welcome back once again to another episode of Heartfelt Horror. I'm your host, William Hamilton. And before we get going, I just wanted to say this. I am still sick. I apologize to the audience at home for the state of my voice. That said, the show must go on, and it will go on. And we're going to have a great show tonight. Okay, so remember, like, subscribe, share with your friends, all of that stuff. I really appreciate it. And make sure to go and check out these bands as well. Now, with that said, if you two could please introduce yourselves to the fine folks at home, I'd really appreciate that.
How you doing? I'm Nuke.
I'm Corey.
And we're members of Nuke and the Nightshift.
Awesome. Thank you both for being here. Thank you so much. Let's jump right into this. The first thing I wanted to ask you, as always, as the audience I'm sure is picking up, is let's get a little bit of a history of the project. How did this all start? What brought you all together? And how did you end up here where you are now?
Oh man, how long you got?
I'd say probably in about 2003, I was in the band Nuke and the Living Dead, and we traveled to his town of Oscoda, Michigan, or maybe we were playing in the next town, Tawas, and we played an all ages show, and
I attended it at about 15 years old and started a band the next day, and then later in life, Nuke transplanted up north, and we didn't really have a band at that time, so we kind of reformed a band, and we were in bands together back then, but separate. Now we're in one together, and it's kind of a whole nother thing, whole nother legacy of Nuke kind of rebirthed.
That's awesome. I really like that. I like the story of like you guys playing that show, meeting each other, and then it inspiring you, and everything kind of coming full circle there. That's really cool.
Yeah, it's nice to be in a band. I think 13 years after the last time I had seen them guys, and they invited me over to hang out one time after I moved north out of the city, and we started a band that night. Didn't even plan it. We just played some music, and it was just solid right off the bat. It was ready to roll.
That's awesome. That's awesome. Well, let's talk about that music then. How does the writing process work for this project?
Well, we live about an hour and a half away from each other, so a lot of times I'll come in this room here and maybe grab a guitar or a bass, and I'll just write like some bones. You know, I'll come up with like the melody or something, and then some lyrics, and then sometimes I'll record that and send it over. Or I'll just go out there. We don't get to practice a lot because we're always playing on the road. That's where we meet us, on the road, and then we all travel together once they pick me up off the freeway. So, but when I do go out there and we practice, then we'll just kind of, like I said, I'll send them those bones of a song, and then we'll just piece it together right on the spot there.
Yeah, then we'll just dig into it as like a band a little more and try to change things we think need changes, and of course see if he likes it as well. And
I just bring the simple recipe to them, and then they fill in all the ingredients.
And
the
recording process was one by one, so it took a long time. Every track was separate.
So with that in mind, like it sounds like it's a real collaborative process. Yes, there's, like you were saying, a strong soup and bones that's brought, but then it sounds like the guys are all jump in and add their own like spin and twist, a little tweak things here and there. And I was in preparing for this interview, I listened to you guys' most recent album, Cold Hearted Rock and Roll, and the album itself is awesome. Like I was listening to it from start to finish, and I listened to it last night and tonight. I like to prepare for these kind of things. And it has a real, like, how do I even describe it? There are like slight elements of pop and even grunge, I think I would say, at like the very last song on the album. Like I hear a little bit of like grunge in there, but I also hear like a strong punk and like heavy metal influence as well, which is something I really appreciate. It's a very well written. Each of the songs are very well written and very well produced, which goes a long way. Like being a good songwriter is like that's something that attracts me. It doesn't matter how good the like polish is on something. Good polish helps, audience, and I've been driving that home this season. Please, please, it's 2025 by the time this will come out. So,
Yeah, polish it
you know,
up.
yeah, polish it up, please. But that said, good songwriting is good songwriting, and it shines through no matter what. And I with your guys' album, it was just like a total package. It had that, it had all of that. It had good melodies and harmonies. And so let's talk a little bit about that. About where do the ideas for the melodies and harmonies in your singing come from? Because they're really catchy and really interesting.
Yeah, thanks.
Well, first off, yeah, I appreciate you saying that. I'm glad you enjoyed it. I grew up on old country and rockabilly and doo-wop and stuff like that. So so a lot of my stuff comes from that. And then I got into the Doors a lot when I was a young teenager. So with between Elvis and Jim Morrison and people like that, and then with the punk stuff, as a young teenager, I really liked the late 70s and early 80s punk. So of course, Fear and Misfits and throw some blues and 80s metal into all that, and we try to add all those elements of 70s punk to 80s metal, rockabilly, blues. We try to add all that in to different, obviously not every song, but you won't hear the same song over and over. You're gonna hear a mix of those different influences for sure.
Yeah, the guitar player will sit down and they'll find where they fit best on the highs or the lows and what works with harmonies and like where to bring them in and out kind of thing.
Yeah, me and Brady definitely work on them vocal harmonies, and Corey's been getting in on it a lot more lately too.
Getting better at it, yeah. Yep.
Well, it's paying off. I mean, like I said, the album, it was beautiful, and I mean that from start to finish. And like they were saying, audience, it none of the songs are repetitive, like at all. There's a definite, you can tell sometimes bands, like even if they're good songwriters, they get stuck in a pattern and they think that pattern is a style, and that's okay. Like there are definitely bands that fall into like genre trappings like that. But one thing that I really enjoy is when bands kind of experiment a little bit more with the form and they try things a little bit differently. And I promise you, if you listen to the first song on the album, the second song, third song, fourth song, it all sounds like the same band, but it doesn't sound all like the same song. It's not like that at all. And that's a hard thing to do. It's hard to get a sound from a band and then at the same time not have it feel like the same song over and over. So I want to just commend you guys on that, because it's a difficult thing to do, but I think you guys got that.
Thank you.
Means a lot.
The album has a theme to it. It's kind of like a dark love story. It starts off kind of like a relationship starts off. It's kind of like happy and then it like there's all these dark twists and turns, and then in a bad relationship, by the time you're done with it, you're like toward the end of our album on a song called what's the last song? Renegade. So it starts off all happy, it ends off all pissed off. It's just kind of a fun theme that we went with on this one.
For sure,
cold
for
hearted
sure.
at the end of it, you know.
Yeah, yeah. So let's talk about then, or talk about that. What was I mean, obviously, like you're saying, it's got that story, but what's the inspiration behind that? Like what in was there an intentionality to like how the album was structured or how you guys did that, or did it just come to you guys naturally as the progress moved on?
I think a little bit of both.
Yeah, yeah.
Because a couple of the songs that have to do with relationship and that kind of energy were older, and then a couple of the songs were brand new. You know, the older ones were revamped, and then new fresh recordings and everything, and then it just was kind of pieced together to be kind of like an up and down type of thing, so that way you're not emotionally just kind of stagnant. It'll bring you up and down a little bit, listening to it. That was kind of the plan, but it, loosely it fell into place probably better than I would have planned it.
And the initial concept kind of come from like having it be cold-hearted rock and roll, and like, oh, maybe it'll be like harder music for the ladies too, a little bit, to make it. I don't know. That was kind of the initial concept, and then it took a story turn, I guess, in a way.
That's so cool. That's so cool. All right, so then let's talk about your guys' single that you guys put out in October, I believe, correct?
Yep, that's right.
Yeah, and it's going to be called Grave Robin, I believe. What brought that all together? Because I heard that recently and I I loved it. Like I loved the song, I loved the melody, the hook, the whole story. So let's talk about that specifically for a little bit.
Well, Grave Robin on Saturday Night was an old song. I think it first came out with Nuke and the Toxic Offenders. Never did get recorded, so the Nuke and the Living Dead recorded it. So he had the first album, and everyone liked the song live, So we just decided to do a nice, juicy, brand new recording of it, and big Tony Farrell from Rubber Wolf Graphics, he just knocked the artwork out of the park with that, and yeah, so first Saturday of October that came out or is going out, depending on what time frame you want to talk about it. But yeah, so we're very, at this point right now, it's not out yet, but when you air this, it will be. So we're excited to put that out. A nice single around Halloween time to kick off the season.
Yep.
That's awesome. That's awesome. Well, then I think let's talk a little bit about the influences of this project overall. Let's start with musically. Obviously, we've talked a little bit about how rock and roll, from the blues and country and rockabilly and all of that kind of plays into this, and metal and punk. But what are specific bands that you would say that's a band that when I was a kid, and this is a question for both of you, obviously, which bands would you say inspired you to want to make music, and which bands inspired you to want to make the kind of music that you guys are playing now?
What do you think, Dwight, for you?
When I first started, it was like Rob Zombie and stuff like that. That's because I was like 90s kid, born in the 90s, and like first tape I ever got was Rob Zombie, and and then starting seeing live music's really what made it happen. It wasn't until I seen a band and stuff, But our parents were really cool. They'd drive us around when we were 15 years old and take us to these shows and stuff, and the rest is history, kind of. But man, all the punk stuff too. I mean, back then finding music was tricky because you just kind of did it by the word of mouth, I guess, and just I don't know, all the Misfits stuff is so good too. Even when they changed singers, loved it, and this all was really good. I think
yeah.
Fear, there's a handful of ones that really stick out. Be big influences, Yeah, what do you think?
For me, it was just bands that blew me away live. Like The Damned, just bands that I would see as a kid or a teenager that just blew me away is what really inspired me. Like Fear, some of the Misfit lineups. The Damned was a big one for me. They were just incredible live. I'm sure there's so many more. I used to see Clutch when they first came out. Man, they were incredible in the earlier to mid '90s. Just a good live act inspired me, and just any record I could get back in the day that I could play was just excellent. Just a special thing,
Yeah, yeah, for sure, for sure. I can definitely relate to that. When I was growing up, I was growing up during the 90s and the, mid early 2000s. That's when I was in high school. I graduated in 2007. And so I was right at that point where there were still CD stores, like the big ones. You'd go in there and
Yeah.
there'd be like these rows and rows and rows of all this music. And then
Harmony
right
House
as I
or
was
something.
graduating, they all started disappearing. And I was just
Yeah.
like, no, like, where am I going to find music now? But music finds a way, I guess. So, because here we are today. Anyways, but with that said, like, I love that. When I was coming up, I was in these like local pop punk bands, and we played some shows. We played some shows in the area with some bands that I liked music. I was a music listener. My grandpa was a music listener and he got me into it. He got me into Aerosmith and the Ramones and like that kind of stuff. And then
Love the
and
Ramones.
yeah, yeah. It was for him, it was he got me Aerosmith, Ramones, and the Beach Boys. Those were the first three tape cassettes I owned.
All
Was
good.
that.
That's great.
And then so that was the first music I heard, but the first bands that really got me into it were the bands that I was actually playing with at the time. There was a band called Voodoo Sun, and I will forever and always shout out that band as one of the greatest in history that no one is going to ever know of, and it is such a shame. I've got their full discography still at a CD here, and someday I'll put it up for them whether they like it or not.
I was going to say, send it to me if you put it up. I want to hear it.
For sure, for sure. And then the other band that I really grew close to, and this actually started me in this direction towards horror punk and goth and horror rock and all of that, really just darker rock and roll in general, was this band called Delinquent Mary. They'd later changed their name to The Banished, but that was their name. And not to rabbit trail too far here, off here. We're here to talk about, Nuke and the Nightshift, but the reason I'm bringing this up is for the audience at home. All of these bands that they're mentioning and like how this happens and the things that inspire you, we want, and I'm speaking for myself, but I'm sure I'm speaking, for our guests as well. We want bands to come forward with that kind of energy, that big performance energy, like you were saying, Nuke, bands that blew you away. And you get there by being in these little garage bands. You get there by like you got to put your time and your energy in. Yes, you've got to be a good songwriter. We harp on that on the show all the time, but it's also about your performance and your image and how you sell yourself, because music is a live art form. It's not just a recording thing, and it can be, and there's nothing wrong with that. But to me, the best bands, the reason they're so good is because they've tested themselves out live. They've put it out there and they know what they're doing. And I think you can hear that in the music that Nuke and the Nightshift is putting out. I think that you guys as a project, you sound tight. The recordings are clean. Like you were saying about the artwork, it's awesome. And you guys put effort into making that presentation come forward. And I appreciate that. And I just want the audience at home to know, like, if you're thinking of starting a project, first of all, put the work in, do it responsibly, make sure your bills are paid and everything. I'm not trying to get, that kind of advice out there, but do it responsibly and have fun with it, because life is too short. And I've really enjoyed this journey, meeting these bands and getting to learn all these things. Since we're talking about this and we're more or less talking to the audience here, I was curious from you two, if you had writing tips or advice that you would want to give, or any advice really to a band coming up, what do you think that you would like to tell your younger selves looking out for, for the new artists?
Well, I'd say you gotta, dig deep. Don't be afraid to put your emotions out there. You don't have to just go ahead and say it. Me, I use a lot of I write kind of like in little, mysteries where if I don't want to just say something outward, I'll just kind of wrap it into some other package. But yeah, just take influence and from your life mostly. I think the best songs are going to come from influences of your life. But you can get influence from movies or other music, whatever fuels you creatively. Use that and dig into that and go down that rabbit hole. Then just push that out.
So then let's talk about what other things influence your guys' project then, because you were talking about movies there for a minute. What other forms of media, whether it's movies or video games or anything else, would you say influences this project in a way?
Sometimes skateboarding. I don't know. I like hobbies other than music, but yeah, sometimes skateboarding will be, or just hanging out at the skate park. And
I think we kind of lived this project just because we were just playing so many shows around the time we started writing these songs. But
yeah,
but for me, like the early Trauma movies, like Class of Nuke High, like that's where I stole my name from. Just like Toxic Avenger, stuff like that. That kind of stuff is just fun to me. Just overly animated type of craziness. It influences me. A lot of that 80s stuff.
For sure, for sure. Well, I'm going to start wrapping this up here, but before we go, I've got to ask a question from both of you. And this is, if you were to tell people to come and say, hey, this is my band, right? If they've never heard you guys before at all, what is the one song, whether new or old, that you would say, this is the song I want you to hear first. Go check it out. And this is what represents us as a whole.
Well, I probably want to give them one from the new one, just because. So, I'm really proud of the song "Last Night on Earth," just from what I did on that record. So I would definitely tell them to check out that, and one of my favorite songs live to play is "Drunk on Formaldehyde." So I'd have to tell you to check that out.
It is such a good song, by the way.
Thank you.
It is such a good song. Yeah, I loved it. Sorry, go ahead.
No, yeah, kind of. Or I really like Grave Robin too. I was a proponent to getting that back. We're trying to polish that as much as we can and see what it sounds like on our rendition of it. So
Nice,
that's
nice.
I'm excited to hear what people think of that. Once it
All
does
right.
come out.
Well,
Yeah.
are there any bands in that you guys have played with or in your local area that you think deserve attention, that you would want to shout out and be like, hey, if you like us, go check these guys out?
There's so many that I could mention. So I'm just gonna call out a few that's just literally just spewing off my tongue, because I don't want to leave anyone out. But I mean, for me, the Strange, the Pink 50s, Agrodie. Okay, you go.
Yeah, all of them.
I'm gonna forget so many. So
I know. Gosh, I can't even think of it right now. I feel put on the spot, but man, Elvis Hitler is so good. I mean,
those Freak
Box, yeah, Class 5s, man. But they're all just bands of people we've been in bands with too. Like you say, there's so many that have been a thing that nobody will ever hear of, but but they were so good back in the day, like the Scandalouses and the Imp Villains and all the Defiled Youth, all these old school stuff that's super good. Hope somebody puts it on YouTube,
For sure, for sure. Well, thank you both so much for being here. I've had a blast with this conversation. So for the audience at home, and I have said this a couple of times, especially near the end of last season, when I invite people onto this show, I am inviting them literally into my home. You see a backdrop behind me, and that's all that is. It's just, cloth or whatever. But I invite people into my home and I treat them as guests in my home. And the way that we interact, whether before or after the conversation, tells me a lot about someone and the character that they've had. I have had a great time with this conversation, getting to know these two gentlemen. I really enjoy their music, and I think you will too. Definitely go check them out. I found their music on YouTube and via Facebook. That was how I initially found them. but where would you want them to go? Would you want them to go to Spotify or Bandcamp, or where's the best place you'd like to send them?
Man,
Well, I got a couple of shout outs here as far as that, but like if you want to check out the music, you can go to Spotify, YouTube, Apple, Amazon, or Boomplay. Spotify seems to be the best right now that people like. I wanted to shout out to our two biggest artists that we use on these albums, because it's all real art, you know, no fake stuff here. It's Tony Farrell, Rubber Wolf Graphics, and the most recent who did all the cold-hearted rock and roll stuff is Jay Voltage from the band Agua or Die.
Well, there you go. And if you guys need any artwork, reach out to them. See if you can get some commission work done for them, because they're right. The artwork has been absolutely beautiful on everything that I've seen. And it's definitely worth it to support local artists, whether they're musicians or whether they're graphic artists or whatever else. Thank you for bringing that up and reminding me about that as well. All right. Well, with that said, audience at home, I want to thank you again for tuning in to these episodes. I want to thank you for supporting us. I genuinely didn't know if I was going to do a season 2, and it's really cool to see that people are taking an interest in what I'm doing, but more importantly, what these bands are doing, because that's the point of this show. Is we're here to highlight these bands, learn from them how they write, and help spread a little bit of word about them, get them out some more. I genuinely love your guys' music, and I'm looking forward to hearing more. I'm gonna try and get a physical copy of that Cold Hearted Rock and Roll as soon as payday comes around. So thank you guys for,
Anything physical you need, t-shirts, patches, stickers, CDs, it's all available. If you're not at the show, just go to nukeandthenightshift.com, and we got all the nice things you could need, all the good stuff here. So just send us an order, and we'll send you some free stickers and everything with any purchase.
And you heard it. Go to it. Go help them out and go buy that stuff, because it is definitely worth it. Like they were saying, quality of the art is beautiful. The music is good. Support the bands that you want to see, and it's great. All right, to the audience at home, again, like, share, subscribe. Thank you all so much for your support. Our link to Patreon will be down below if you feel like doing so. And I am going to leave this note. If you are in a position where you cannot afford to support someone through Patreon or anything else, don't do it. We don't want you to put yourself in harm's way. We had an issue with that last year, and that's why I'm saying it during this video. We do appreciate the support, but more importantly, we want to make sure that everyone's okay. Support us if you can by liking and sharing. Other than that, with that said, you all have a good night, and thank you both for coming on.
We really appreciate you having us on. Have a good one.
Just